All right, it's 7:02, so we'll get started with the introductory part. And I'm sure a few more people will join us as we're getting going. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Atara Margulies, and I'm the project manager for the Friendship Heights Sector Plan. Tonight, I am here with actually the rest of the team, who you'll meet along the way this evening, to present a summary of our existing conditions findings. Tonight's presentation is not about the future of Friendship Heights. It's about Friendship Heights today, which is what we start with. As a planning team, it's really important for us to have a thorough understanding of the plan area as it is today before we even begin thinking about recommendations for the future. This is the standard sort of first phase of all master and sector plans. First, before I begin, we will go through some administrative notes. This is obviously taking place on Zoom webinar, so just to explain how this will work in case you haven't been on a Zoom webinar before. For the first hour or so, we will be talking. It's like you're taking a class on Friendship Heights tonight, and you'll hear from many different planners, not just me, about what they researched and what they learned about the plan area. At the end of the presentation, we'll have around 20 to 30 minutes for questions and answers. I want to call your attention to 3 buttons at the bottom of your screen, and you may actually have to move your mouse to the bottom of the screen to have the menu bar show up, depending on what version of Zoom you're in. There may be other icons, but the ones I'm going to focus on are the 3 you see here. There is a chat icon, a Q&A icon, and a little box with a CC in it. So the chat icon is a little bit different than chat in a normal meeting. Only we can see what you chat, and so therefore we're just going to use that chat if you're having technical difficulties, and there are staff that are looking at that chat box now. If you can't hear, if you need the call-in number, things like that. That is all information that you can, if you put it in the chat, that we'll be able to help you. And so that's what the chat is for. Q&A is how you will submit questions. You can submit questions along the way, or you can wait until the end. Either way, we have staff monitoring as well that particular box. And if there are easy questions to answer, they might just type the answer in right then. And if they're sort of more technical questions or one that require one of the experts on the team to answer, then we'll wait till the end and we'll handle that question during our Q&A. And if you need closed captioning, you can click that show captions button, that CC button, and it will generate automatic captions based on what we're saying. We can't turn that on for you. You have to turn that on for yourself. So now we're going to get started. First, I will give a quick update on where we are in the plan schedule, and then I'll follow with a brief overview of our engagement. And then we'll jump into the existing condition summary, which is organized by topic. And so you'll have planners presenting their topics. We kicked off this plan in the fall of 2024 with several months of pre-scope engagement. We met with community members in and around Friendship Heights, and we started to talk about some of the major concerns people have regarding the downtown. We presented a scope of work and a plan boundary to the planning board in February, and then we jumped right into this existing conditions analysis that we're summarizing tonight. We will be moving directly into visioning in June, which I will be talking about at the end of this presentation. I want also to note, we're not going to recap it here. We've talked about it many times with the community, and there's also a lot to get through tonight. But we did complete an urban design study for Friendship Heights in 2024. And a lot of what we discuss here with regard to pedestrian network, urban design, and parks builds on the findings of that study. This shows the plan boundary that we're using for this sector plan. It includes the downtown Friendship Heights, and we've labeled a few places that you might be familiar with. You can see the metro station, the Saks building, the collection, Geico. And so it includes the downtown, and it also includes a portion of the Brookdale neighborhood going all the way to River Road, and also including Willard Avenue Neighborhood Park. And the next thing I'm going to show you is important for tonight's meeting, which is the study area. In every sector plan, we establish a study area because we can't plan in a vacuum. It's really a set area that serves as the context area for the plan. It has a weird boundary because we use census boundaries to define it to help us with some of the data you'll see tonight. This is really most important during this phase, the existing conditions phase. And as you'll see, particularly with this small plan area, gathering data for the context as well as the plan area can really be a helpful tool and can really sort of enlighten and shed some light on things that we're learning about in the plan area. So you'll see data presented in this presentation, both for the plan area and the study area. And keep in mind, when you see the data for the study area, it includes the plan area as part of that. It does not exclude that. And you'll begin to see that as we keep going through the presentation. Of course, the unique thing, of course, about the context in Friendship Heights is that pretty much half of the study area is in DC and half is in Maryland, and we'll talk about that. We also look at data, comparing the data of these two areas to the county as a whole, and sometimes even to DC, because for Friendship Heights, that's pretty relevant. I'm going to just do a brief summary of where we are in terms of engagement until this point. We have a set of engagement goals, which we had presented when we talked about the scope of work. We've trying to meet these goals all the time and always trying to improve upon our engagement tactics. We want to reach a wide range of stakeholders. We want to make sure we're being clear and straightforward with our messaging. And we want to provide opportunities that make it easy for people to participate. We're trying to be collaborative with as many community partners as we can. And we are coming to Friendship Heights whenever possible to meet you in your own community. Since the fall of 2024, we've held some large engagement events and some smaller ones. On the left is an image from the planned kickoff event from November. And we've also been at the Village of Friendship Heights many times. We've met with other individuals and groups throughout Friendship Heights and in the neighboring communities around Friendship Heights. And we recently conducted a fun engagement event, which you can see on the right, which is with the Friendship Heights Alliance Youth Advisory Council, which was great and a way to engage teenagers in the plan. This is a snapshot of the groups we've met with so far, and we'll just continue to keep growing this list as the plan continues. If anybody here is part of a group that we haven't met with, you should reach out to us after this presentation, and we'd be happy to meet with you as well. Now we're going to really move into the meat of the presentation. We're going to start talking about the existing conditions analysis, topic by topic, and we'll paint a picture of what Friendship Heights is like today. It's a lot of data to cover, and just a reminder that if you have questions along the way, put them in the Q&A box, and we will get to them one way or another. These are the topics we're going to cover, and this is what we'll get through in the next hour or so. So just it's a lot of data, and we really want to give the community this opportunity to kind of digest the data, but we will be recording. We're recording this presentation and it will go on our website. So there'll be opportunity to kind of revisit things, or if folks that you know couldn't make it who are interested, they'll be able to watch it as well. We'll start with a brief context and development background of Friendship Heights. So of course, everyone here knows the context of Friendship Heights. It's a unique cross-jurisdictional urban area located where Wisconsin meets Western at the border with DC. Friendship Heights is, of course, the neighborhood on both sides of the border. And while we can only plan the Maryland side, we will, of course, be keeping in mind the DC side, and we're constantly coordinating with our DC partners. It's located in an area of Chevy Chase that has numerous special taxing districts and municipalities, as shown in the map on the right. We have been and will continue to coordinate with all of these communities throughout the plan. It's worth noting that while all of these do have some level of local governance, none of them have land use or zoning authority, which is important with regard to the sector plan. And my team is telling me that I should remind everyone that the closed captions are automatically generated. It's sort of like an AI tool that's within Zoom. So it's not like we get to provide them with the text beforehand. So they may not be 100% correct, but hopefully they're 90 or 95% correct. So we apologize for that, but it's the limits of the tools available to us right now. So now we'll talk a little bit about the history of Friendship Heights. So like much of Montgomery County, Friendship Heights was farmland until the early 1900s, when two major landowners from the Offutt and Shoemaker families combined their land and began to subdivide it. This was at the same time that Francis Newlands and the Chevy Chase Land Company were developing Chevy Chase. Washington, D.C. was growing, and there were plans to extend the streetcar system through Northwest all the way into Maryland. So Chevy Chase and Friendship Heights both sort of developed simultaneously into single-family home neighborhoods that were largely for upper middle class to wealthy white families. However, inspired by the success of the Hecht's department store that opened in downtown Silver Spring in 1947, DC department store Woodward and Lothrop decided to open a store at the corner of Western and Wisconsin, which you can see on the lower left-hand corner of your slide. Just a few years later, Lord & Taylor opened across the street, and then several other retailers began to follow. Geico, sort of interested in all the activity that started happening in Friendship Heights, decided to build its headquarters here in 1959. You can see the picture of that over here. And a mere decade later, Friendship Heights was known as a place to shop with a growing business community. And just to orient yourselves, you can see this curved facade right here of the original footprint of the Woodies, which is the same curved facade here. So like this is, Wisconsin in this picture right here, and this is Western. So moving on. Zoning changes just after this time, early 1960s, for areas near future rail transit, as in future metro stations, were implemented. These allowed for taller buildings and greater density in Friendship Heights. The transformation of Friendship Heights was actually largely spearheaded by one woman, Thelma Edwards, also known as Tim to everyone. She was one of the first realtors to realize what the zoning changes meant. She convinced the homeowners in Friendship Heights to sell their homes in groups to developers so that small parcels could be combined into larger ones. She could visualize that Friendship Heights would be a great location for lots of multifamily buildings. Many homeowners actually jumped at the chance to do this, and they profited from these opportunities. And this woman had such an impact on the area that there's a plaque dedicated to her in Hubert Humphrey Park, the park in front of the Village of Friendship Heights Community Building. Multifamily towers started popping up by the late 1960s, and by the 70s, the village had transformed from a neighborhood of houses. You can see the aerial here from the 50s it's blurry, but it's a lot of trees and houses. And then by the 70s, there's a whole sea of multifamily buildings here. That's basically, from an urban planning perspective, an overnight transition. By the time the existing sector plan, which was written in 1998, which we have talked about in previous presentations, by the time that was written, Friendship Heights was a popular regional destination and a mixed-use center. And you can see this transition in the images here. And of course, this is a relatively recent aerial showing sort of all the development we have in Friendship Heights today. So now we're going to look at the demographic profile of Friendship Heights. And I will say I am presenting this information on behalf of our research planner, James Lee, who's on vacation this week. So if people have demographic questions in particular, you're free to put them in the Q&A box, but it's possible that we'll need to get back to you later about those, but we'll see how it goes. So we're going to look here, as I said earlier, not just at the profile of the plan area, but also the profile of the study area and how it compares to Montgomery County and DC. Currently, the study area has about 24,000 residents. About 58% of that study area population is on the Maryland side, and the other balance is on the DC side, and 25%, 6,000 people, live inside the plan area. Looking at the population growth, and you can see in the chart on the right, the study area population grew by 10% since 2000, which is a slower growth rate than Montgomery County and DC. And the plan area growth was even lower, only a 2% growth over the past 25 years in terms of population in the plan area. In the chart's second bar from the left on this slide about age distribution, it shows that 36% of the plan area's residents are 65 and over, which is more than double the percentage for Montgomery County or DC. The study area's population is also a higher than average percentage of seniors, but that's influenced by the fact that the plan area is inside the study area. If you take a look at the racial profile of the study area and the plan area, you will see that the study area, which is the bar all the way to the left, and the plan area, which is the bar second from the left, are both less racially diverse than Montgomery County or DC. About 72% of the study area's residents are white, which is quite a big difference from 40% in the county overall. However, if you look at the other percentages of the other races, and I hope you can see the key here, but I'll read it in case you can't. Orange is Hispanic or Latino. The light green are other races that are not Hispanic. The dark green is identifying as Asian, and the light blue, people who identify as Black. If you look at the comparison here, the second bar on the left for the plan area shows that the plan area is a little bit more racially diverse than the study area overall. It has 14% people that identify as Asian compared to 15% in the county. That's quite close. And its Hispanic population is quite close to that of DC. So in this situation, the plan area moves the needle a little bit on diversity as compared to the study area. In terms of household type, so the study area and the sector plan area are actually quite different. The majority of the study area households, 56%, are families, people who are related and live together in one dwelling unit. This is less than Montgomery County, where it's 2/3 of households are families. But for the plan area, 56% households are people living alone. The plan area's distribution is actually much closer to the distribution in DC, where nearly half of households are people living alone. The difference in composition here between the study area overall and the plan area is likely related to two things. One, that the plan area has an older age structure, which means more seniors living alone, and a larger amount of apartment-style housing, which also tends to attract, single-member households. The DC region is well known for being highly educated, and thus so is the study area, where 85% of residents ages 25 and over have at least a bachelor's degree, and more than half, or 59%, have a graduate degree. This actually makes the study area more educated than Montgomery County or DC. Both are already considered highly educated places. So unlike other demographic characteristics that we just looked at, like age and household type, here the plan area and the study area are very similar in terms of educational attainment. The study area is a high-income area with an average household income of about $268,000. The plan area's average income is about $205,000, certainly still higher than Montgomery County or DC, which you can see here in the box on the right, but lower than that of the study area. Now, the difference may also be related to the age structure. Since 36% of the plan area population is 65 and over, compared to the study area, which was 25%, one likely explanation for the difference in income is that there's a larger percentage of individuals who are retired, and they may be drawing income from Social Security or 401ks or pensions, et cetera. And so their income may appear as lower in sort of that reported income category that we're pulling from here from the Census Bureau. However, older households are also more likely to have significant wealth that's not captured in income data. We don't have local level data on wealth, but national level data shows that older households, on average, have more wealth than younger households in the form of savings, retirement accounts, home ownership, and other assets. So based on this information and other characteristics such as education and housing, a topic that will be covered in the next section, or two sections from now, we will infer that the plan area is likely to be relatively wealthy. Now we're going to move to talk about land use and zoning, and I promise that after that you'll hear someone else present, and it won't be me. Friendship Heights is one of 4 Montgomery County downtowns, or former central business districts. It's the second smallest downtown at only 113 acres. And you can look at this slide and you see that Wheaton is also a pretty small downtown at 83 acres, but Silver Spring and Bethesda are much larger. The 450 acres indicates what we would consider downtown Bethesda today. A long time ago, the central business district, which was much smaller, was 156, but you can sort of see from these what we call figure ground maps, where we reduce everything to blocks and streets, how much larger Bethesda and Silver Spring are than Friendship Heights and Wheaton. And it's important to keep in mind the differences between these downtowns in terms of scale. With its small size, Friendship Heights is a different scale of downtown and therefore a bit of a different typology of downtown than the 2 large downtowns that we often think of. And we will see more about this as we delve into the details of this presentation. Friendship Heights is a mixed-use area with commercial uses lining the Wisconsin Avenue corridor as it extends into the district. And you can see that here. This is Wisconsin. This is DC. This is Maryland. And the pink and the light pink and the dark pink is sort of office and retail. And you see that spine extending pretty far down Wisconsin. On the other hand, sort of surrounding it, certainly on the Maryland side, are this sort of like dark olive color, which represents multifamily. And you can see lots of those. And then the yellow is a single family, either attached or detached, depending on the shade. In DC, of course, you've got a lot more attached, and here we mostly have detached. You can see the parks. They're very light colored on the land use map, but this is a park. These light green areas here. They really do surround the downtown and on all sides. And you can see, of course, that the Brookdale neighborhood, of course, as we know, is single family housing that's included in this plan boundary. And what really sticks out here is this sort of, commercial node that's only a few blocks long, surrounded by all this housing. So now we're just going to look at the existing zoning of the plan area itself. The zoning in the downtown is mostly commercial residential, or what we call CR, with two notable exceptions. The Geico parcel and the Saks parcel, and I'll show you where those are here. So the Geico parcel is this large parcel here that has these interesting patterns on it, and we'll talk about what that means. And then the Saks parcel is the one up here with the orange in the yellow parking lot. The Geico parcel is split between commercial residential, which is orange, along Willard and Friendship, and a single family zoning called R60 with an overlay zone that we call a TDR, Transfer Development Rights Overlay Zone. To make it simple, this overlay zone basically allows a much higher residential density than the underlying zoning. If in the case that you would be able to transfer additional development rights from elsewhere in the county, according to the specific rules, to this parcel. But that would be how this parcel would be able to receive additional development rights under the existing zoning. And then the CR zoning that lines it over here is both commercial and residential is allowed here. And that's true on all the orange parcels you see. Those are commercial or residential. The Saks parcel is notable because it has the regular commercial residential zoning we would expect in a downtown on the parcel where the building is, but the parking lot is actually zoned R60, which is a single family zoning, and that's one of the reasons why that parking lot has stayed how it is. Pretty much all the parcels in the downtown are what we call CR3, which means the maximum FAR, the maximum density you could build is 3 times the area of the site in terms of a math problem. With a few exceptions, there's a CR5 down here, which would allow the greatest density on this site. And then also this is Somerset House, and it has sort of an older residential zoning that allows for taller buildings. This is just looking at the heights that are assigned according to the zoning. So we just looked at what the sort of density types and levels that are allowed, and this is looking at the heights. The zoned heights here really vary from 35 feet on all of the single family residential parcels in Brookdale, which is standard for that zoning, to a 145-foot tall at the border with DC, which is down here. Most of the zoned heights in the village in this medium color blue are around 90. But one notable exception is this RH zone, which is has complicated zoning rules about setbacks and how much room the buildings can take up on the site. But they didn't have a hard height limit at the time when the buildings were built. And so those buildings some of them are 200 feet tall, the Somerset condos. And we'll talk a little bit more about height in the urban design section. This is just a snapshot of the development in Friendship Heights. Of the we have 9.4 million square feet in Friendship Heights overall. About 60% of that is residential, 22% office, 11% retail, and we'll talk about those submarkets later on in this presentation. Something else that we always take a look at in an existing conditions analysis is the zoning capacity, which means what is the maximum development possible here today, given the existing map zoning? It's a bit of a complicated story in Friendship Heights, so I'm going to try and simplify it just in these 2 slides. In the early 1960s, the zoning code was changed such that parcels near future metro could be built to higher densities. And the 1964 master plan, which was the first master plan done by the planning department that focused on Friendship Heights and didn't just subsume it into Chevy Chase, reinforced that zoning change. You can see in this map, just as we talked about with the history and Thelma Edwards convincing people to combine the parcels. I know it's a bit dark, but if you can see that most of Friendship Heights is sort of single family parcels, and there's a few here that have been combined, but those were also originally mapped as small single family parcels. But you can recognize that some of these other blocks where we have large buildings today, this being Willard right here and this being North Park, and of course all of these blocks, none of those have been combined or thought about yet in terms of large development. However, by the 1974 plan, only 10 years later, so many more parcels had been developed and so many more of these buildings had been built. I mean, look at that change in 10 years, right? The people really were worried. This is much too much development too fast, and they were very worried about traffic, and there'd be too much traffic, and therefore in the 1974 plan that led to Friendship Heights being downzoned for the first time. In the 1998 plan, the zoning was mostly preserved in general, and they used a zoning called CBD1, which was something that was sort of matched what, carried over from the previous zoning. It doesn't really matter what it means because in 2014, we changed our zoning ordinance entirely, and there was a conversion process where some zones were automatically changed to a new zone. CBD1 was changed to CR3. And what that means for Friendship Heights is that it's a CR3 on all of these parcels. But in real life, those are much denser than a 3 FAR. Some of these apartment parcels are a 5 FAR or a 7 FAR, but the mapped zoning doesn't demonstrate that. And that's why we have sort of an odd situation. All of this is to say that the mapped zoning in Friendship Heights today would yield, if you just did the math straight up, about 7.9 million square feet, and we have 9.4 built. And that is all because of the apartment buildings here. However, if we focus on the sites in Friendship Heights that are underbuilt from their existing zoning perspective, meaning sites that have less development on them than the zoning allows, and I have highlighted those here in purple. So that includes the Saks, it includes all of the collection, it includes this 5550 Friendship office building, and includes all of Geico, etc. Then you basically have there is almost 2 million, a little more than 2 million square feet of development that's still permitted here today that hasn't been built. And that's, when we talk about what the zoning capacity is in Friendship Heights, we really just have to look at those sites. All of the other sites are fully built or perhaps even overbuilt, but we have some kind of significantly large sites that are what we would call underutilized, just in the sense that they hold more development capacity than has been used. And so that's just a standard thing we look at just to understand how the zoning matches up with the development today and what's still possible here today, even with the existing zoning that we have now. And now that I finished sort of explaining all that, I know it was a little complicated. I am going to pass it over to Bhavna to start talking about housing in Friendship Heights.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bhavna Sivasubramanian. I'm a housing research planner in the Research and Strategic Projects Division of the Planning Department. I will be talking about the current housing in the Friendship Heights sector plan area, and then I'll pass it to my colleague Alex to talk more about the economic development in the area. Next. In the Friendship Heights sector plan area, there are over 4,200 units. 91% of these are in large multifamily structures, and 7% are in single-family detached units, which are found in the Brookdale neighborhood. The multifamily units are spread across 11 properties, 5 of which are condominiums, and the remaining are apartment buildings. This predominantly multifamily composition differs from the surrounding areas. The broader study area, which Atara described, has a nearly equal split between single-family and multifamily units, while 2/3 of Montgomery County are single-family units and 1/3 are multifamily. In terms of owner-occupied units, the plan area has a home ownership rate of 43%, which is more similar to DC levels than Montgomery County's 65% home ownership rate. The plan area's lower home ownership rates reflect the larger number of multifamily units, many of which are rental. Next. This chart and the accompanying map on the right show when each type of housing was built in the plan area. As seen, Friendship Heights was only single-family homes until the 1960s, and this is something Atara covered as well in the history section. From this decade onwards, mostly only multifamily units have been built. Accordingly, we can look at the average age numbers. The average age of the single-family homes is 76 years, while the average age of the multifamily buildings is 44 years. And the map on the right, which is only showing the residential properties in the plan area, shows spatially where the single-family homes are. Those are in the Brookdale neighborhood, and where the multifamily structures have been constructed, and this is in the downtown area. Next. So as we're working on a new master plan, it can be helpful to look back at the previous master plan and evaluate which of the recommendations have been met since then. First, one of the recommendations in the 1998 plan was to build 800 to 1,000 dwelling units. Since then, a total of 444 dwelling units have been built, 432 of which are multifamily units in Wisconsin Place, which was built in 2009. There was also a recommendation to include 100 to 300 townhouses at the Geico site, but due to no activity on that site, these have not been built. In terms of affordable housing, there was a recommendation in the 1998 plan to provide affordable units through MPDUs and to avoid alternatives to the MPDU requirement if possible. While 28 MPDUs were provided at Wisconsin Place, this only constituted half of the required 56 MPDUs. There was an alternative compliance agreement for the other half, for which payments were made to the County Housing Initiative Fund. Next. So now looking at multifamily pipeline development in the sector plan area as well as the surrounding DC area. There is currently one approved multifamily building within the plan area at 5500 Wisconsin Avenue. This is number 1 on the map. This will have up to 300 residential units, including 15% MPDUs and 11,000 square feet of ground floor commercial use. There are 4 other planned multifamily projects on the DC side of the study area. The former Mazza Gallery, which is number 2 on the map, is nearly complete, while the other 3 projects are in various stages of the planning process. Next. Now to look, moving from housing stock more to housing affordability. In Friendship Heights, this slide is showing the housing value and housing costs of owner-occupied households in the plan area versus the county as a whole. Overall, and you can see the box that's highlighted on the screen, there is a much higher share of houses in the plan area with a value of $1 million or more relative to Montgomery County. The average housing value in the plan area is just over $1 million, while the average housing value in Montgomery County is approximately $728,000. These high housing values are reflective of average owner costs as well, which are around $5,000 a month in both the plan and study areas, but closer to $3,300 in Montgomery County and DC. Cost burden is another measure of housing affordability. In the plan area, 30% of owner-occupied households spend more than 30% of their income on mortgage costs, and this is in line with 26% of countywide owner-occupied households that are cost burdened. Next. The for sale market is another data point to demonstrate that the plan and study areas are more expensive relative to some of the surrounding geographies. This data point looks only at the for sale condo market, since in 2024 there were only 2 single family detached sales, while there were 87 multifamily sales within the plan area. In 2024, the plan and the study area had higher condo sale prices than most comparative markets. This includes the Bethesda zip code, the DC part of the study area, and Montgomery County as a whole that is shown on the graph. And from 2020, sorry, one more point on this, from 2023 to 2024, the average sale price for condos in the plan area increased 8%, while condo prices increased 19.6% in the Bethesda zip code. Next. And finally, now looking at the renter households in the plan area and their housing costs. These are measured here as gross rent, including utilities. Similar to what we saw for owner-occupied costs, the plan area and the study area had higher monthly rents relative to Montgomery County, with average costs reaching almost $2,800 a month. Montgomery County and DC had average rental costs lower at around $2,100 a month. And renter cost burden is unsurprisingly higher in all these geographies relative to owner-occupied cost burden rates. So 36% of renter-occupied households in the plan area are cost burdened. This is lower than the county rate of 52%, and this could be related to the high household incomes in the plan area that we saw earlier. And I'll now pass it on to Alex to continue talking about housing and economic conditions.
Thanks, Bhavna. Alex Pemberton, real estate planner in the Research and Strategic Projects Division of Montgomery Planning. So as Bhavna mentioned, we have quite strong rents in the Friendship Heights area. And as we zoom out over time, we can kind of see that that trend has been sustainable and going, on an upward curve over time. There was quite a bit of a dip in the pandemic, but things have recovered to previous trend. Next, please. And as we zoom in to Mazza, the residences at Mazza, which will be scheduling their first move-ins in June. They're actually nearing completion right now. They have leased about 10% of their units. Tenant profile on those lease ups is leaning heavily towards older folks who live in the area currently and are downsizing. The building here has very strong rents. It's really on par with very high-end new development like the Sophia and Bethesda, City Ridge, which is further down Wisconsin, closer to the Tinleytown metro station. This is one of the better indicators of where the market is today for new residential multifamily product. But even with rents at these levels, financing conditions and valuations right now are a real challenge for more of that new development that is planned that Bhavna touched on. Next. And so there are a lot of positives to Friendship Heights as a multifamily rental market. It has great metro access, good access to job centers, and a lot of really nice access to parks, natural areas, daily needs type retail. They've got multiple grocery stores. But there are some challenges to these strengths, and that really comes in how all of the pieces of real estate fit together. Next. One of the biggest drivers of where you want to live is where you work. The commercial assets, the employments, and the amenities are really in a state of flux in Friendship Heights right now. That's even greater than what we've seen in some of the rest of the region. The identity of this area, as Atara touched on, used to be centered on high-end soft goods retail. That's been declining for some time. It's transitioning more toward food and beverage, groceries, those daily needs types of users. But the biggest challenge is the office market and that loss of daytime foot traffic that's followed its decline. It's a dense area. It's got a solid employment base within that area, but Geico leaving obviously will reduce that number. We see a lot of transition from this traditional office market to more of a healthcare focused office market, which we will talk about a little bit later. Just want to highlight the employment, and you see that 60% of all the businesses in the area are healthcare related businesses. That is an astounding number, and over a quarter of all employees in the area are in the healthcare industry. Next. Next, please. Thank you. So the office market, as I mentioned, it's really undergoing this big transition. And of course, we all know the story. Pandemic hit and office market has been terrible everywhere. But it's what I want to point out about Friendship Heights in this area is that this predated the pandemic. Really, since about 2015, we've seen a decline in the office market in the Friendship Heights area. That's driven by two major factors, as we've heard. One is a lack of critical mass of area amenities. When you're trying to hire employees, they want to have restaurants that they can go to after work and bars and things to do. That's been increasingly challenging for Friendship Heights, which is a smaller area, to compete with Bethesda, DC, the Roslyn-Ballston corridor, Northern Virginia. And the second big challenge is the aging stock of office space. It doesn't have that space that we call flight to quality type of space where you're able to attract your employees back to the office. Next. And so what we've seen is that since 2015, more space has been vacated than has been leased in Friendship Heights. Geico will be leaving, as we all know. That comprises about 1/5 of all office space in the plan area. Once they've have finality to their exit, the amount of office space vacated will cross the 1 million square foot threshold since the 1998 sector plan was adopted. But again, as the chart shows, this is more than just Geico. This has been a downward trend for a decade now. Next. And so what we've seen, which it's a bit of a bright spot is that the medical office sector has really played an important role by backfilling a lot of this space. This has happened organically. Nobody's planned this. It's just happened because it makes economic sense for the building owners. Medical office users are now the dominant occupant of the older, what we call Class B office space in Friendship Heights. These owners have pivoted to market directly to medical users because they can achieve significantly higher rents than from traditional office users. This, of course, aligns with some of the demographic information that Atara shared. But I want to point out that it also supports the district in a fairly unique way. Medical users draw daytime foot traffic, and they're about twice as employee dense as the traditional office users in the area. Next. So what it's really done is provide this life raft for buildings that might otherwise not be able to find tenants. So what we've found so far in some of our analysis of comparable districts, not only in the Northeast, not only in the DC area, but across the country, is that there's essentially nowhere like Friendship Heights. The combination of the small geographic size, the density, and this burgeoning medical office cluster is really one of a kind. And so figuring out how we leverage those strengths, one of the big things that we've heard from the broker community is the importance of the retail component to keeping that office market attractive. So let's talk about that now. Next, please. And so the retail, again, it's in a state of transition. It's remained healthier overall than office. It's the days of its identity as a high-end premier shopping destination in the region, I think we all realize are over. It's just struggled to compete with developments like Bethesda Row, City Center DC, the places that have really aligned with this new trend toward walkable, experience-oriented retail. That sense of place is just missing a little bit in Friendship Heights. But vacancy has remained quite low in Friendship Heights. Rents have remained quite strong. Next. So there's resilience in the retail market in Friendship Heights. One thing that we've heard is maybe there's too much resilience, maybe it's too strong. There just isn't enough slack in the retail space market with the strong demographics in the area and the relative uniformity of the building stock that enables space to sort of filter down and appeal to some of the more creative types of community-oriented users that need lower rents. There just isn't that stock of older retail buildings on the Maryland side like you see further down on the DC side, or for instance in the Woodmont Triangle area of downtown Bethesda. Next. But as we compare the office market and the retail market, you can see this is a reproduction of the office market chart that we showed a couple slides back, and it's a very different looking chart. It's been much more flat, and that's because the market for space, retail space, has remained much more healthy. Next. So each of these pieces fit together. The office market brings daytime traffic that's critical to sustain restaurants and other retail uses. Those are critical to attract and retain office tenants and residents. And those employees and residents generate demand for the daily needs, like the Amazon family of grocers that's in the area, Trader Joe's, which will open soon in 5335 Wisconsin Avenue, just across the DC side. That'll make apartments more appealing, so on. There's a spiral, there's a coexistence of these uses that are really important, and it's a challenge to maintain this diverse ecosystem in a very small area. But Friendship Heights has been quite resilient in a number of ways. One of the areas where it's lacking is, again, that creative type of retail that supports a sense of place. That is what urban design is all about, and that's what we'll talk about next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyler Milam, and I am the urban designer for the plan. Next. So when we talk about urban design, what do we mean? Urban design is the shaping of the physical form of a place so that the buildings, streets, parks, and public space work in harmony to create a dynamic, welcoming place that supports a thriving public life. Good urban design creates a strong public realm, and public realm is any space or built environment that is open and accessible for public use, regardless of ownership. This includes streets, sidewalks, plazas, parks, and other open spaces. Next. Last spring, we completed the Friendship Heights Urban Design Study, which looked at the public realm within the 1998 sector plan boundary that encompassed the urban core. Some of the key takeaways from the study were that Wisconsin is the primary retail corridor within the plan area and provides lively pedestrian activity. There's a strong pedestrian network within the urban core that's comfortable to use. Pedestrian connection to the neighboring communities is challenging though, and vehicular entrances and other circular driveways often interrupt the pedestrian network. Next. Through public engagement during the urban design study, as well as the sector plan, we've heard that there has not been that much change in Friendship Heights in recent years. And while there are several public spaces within the downtown, most are not fully utilized. Some feel that the downtown is very walkable. From a building perspective, it's a unique mix of high-rise developments and single-family neighborhoods. There's also desire for more neighborhood serving retail and a raise in the level of design. Next. Downtown Friendship Heights has a strong and continuous pedestrian network with sidewalks, mature tree canopy along many streets and in public spaces. There are many crossing points on state and county roads that have high visibility crosswalks, including several signaled crossings. The crossings within the village of Friendship Heights typically use a brick paver treatment that, while aesthetically pleasing, is not as visible to drivers. The sidewalk network and high visibility crossings do not extend into the single family neighborhood of Brookdale. In fact, accessing the downtown from Brookdale or any of the surrounding neighborhoods is difficult. Due to the buffer surrounding the downtown, there are few connections to the neighborhoods. Some of the connections that do exist are so hard to find that you need to know where they are before you can even use them. The images here show three of the most difficult access points to locate. Number one is a trail connection from Somerset. Two shows the connection through Brookdale Neighborhood Park that leads you to the back of Geico. And three depicts the gated entrance to Chevy Chase Village behind the collection. Next. So street activation is a key contributor to the success of the urban pedestrian network. An active street provides a lively relationship between the public realm and the ground floor zones of the buildings that face the street. The level of street activation provides continuous or contributes significantly to pedestrians' experience of the street. Commercial activation is primarily centered around Friendship Heights Metro Station, and extends up Wisconsin Avenue with several popular restaurants and shops, and along Willard Avenue to Friendship Boulevard, primarily from the Whole Foods. Residential activation is primarily located along North Park Avenue with several large multifamily buildings with their entrances facing onto the street. Next. So there are also some streets that are lacking adequate activation, and a lack of activation on a street can also negatively contribute to the pedestrian experience. Frequent curb cuts require pedestrians to continuously watch for vehicles even when they're not in the street. A lack of visibility or eyes on the street makes streets feel less safe. And there are several streets in the downtown that have low levels of street activation. This is in part because of the unique block structure within the downtown. There is no internal circulation on the blocks for access, as each block is essentially one large building, or buildings back onto buffers surrounding the downtown, such as the residential buildings all along North Park Avenue. And this results in utility access being located on the street front. The Hills Plaza, south of South Park Avenue, which is shown here, functions primarily as an access street, making it uncomfortable to use as a pedestrian. Many residential buildings on North Park are also restricted by topography, as mentioned, and so they must front onto North Park Avenue. Next. Some things that we did not discuss in the urban design study are concepts of spatial enclosure and the design of buildings above the ground floor. So spatial enclosure is when an outdoor room is formed by buildings, trees, and other vertical elements. And great outdoor rooms are comfortable, inviting, and provide access to light and air. When a space is well defined, it is more comfortable and inviting, and people are more likely to linger and stay for a while. Most buildings in the plan area are either 1 to 2 stories or 10 stories or more, with few examples of mid-rise buildings. Having a variety of building heights provides interest and definition to a space. However, a wide disparity of building heights, as exists in much of the downtown, can be disorienting. The lack of mid-rise buildings also interrupts the cohesive transition from the surrounding low-rise neighborhoods to a high-rise urban core, and this makes the high-rise appear even taller than they are. There are several locations within the downtown where tall buildings face the street on one side with nothing on the other street. An example of this is shown in the image on the bottom right, with the back of Bloomingdale's facing the Geico parking lot. Next. This map shows how close existing buildings are to the existing zoned maximums, as Attar discussed before. We can see that the single-family parcels in Brookdale, as well as those around the metro station, are closest to their existing height limits. Many of the other buildings in the downtown, which are a mix of multifamily and office buildings, are either significantly over or under the maximum build height. Next. Looking at architecture, the downtown is made up of large multifamily and mixed-use buildings. Multifamily buildings in the plan area reflect their time of construction with elements such as strong horizontal lines, flat roofs, ribbon windows, balconies, and brick and concrete construction. And most were built between the 1960s and the 1980s. Commercial buildings in the plan area reflect a wider range of styles and times of construction, being built between 1960s and the 2000s. The 1 to 2 story buildings within the downtown area are generally retail and restaurants, and their styles range from traditional to modern. Large office buildings are typically built between the 60s and 70s and showcase visible structures and large office windows. Next. Looking at single-family neighborhoods, there are no single-family buildings in the downtown. They're all located within the Brookdale neighborhood. Developed as a planned community in the 1930s and 50s, or through 50s, the homes share similar appearances. Homes feature English cottage and Cotswolds appearance, shown in the images on the right, the three on the right. And over the last few decades, some homes have been replaced by newer construction that use more contemporary styles, which are shown on the images on the left. And next, we will be talking about parks and open spaces.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Henry Coppola. I'm Parks Long Range Planning Supervisor, and I'm pinch hitting tonight, sitting in for Christina Sasaki, who's our park planner on this plan. So please bear with me if I am a little bit less polished than some of the rest of the team on presenting these slides. We'll jump right in and pick up with some of the urban design study takeaways for park and public spaces. And as parks are part of the public realm, like Tyler was discussing, you'll see some references and overlaps with some of the urban design section that preceded this. So we took a look at things that people liked, disliked, and identified as community needs in there. The likes tended to focus for parks around that sort of access to nature, what we think of as more passive and contemplative opportunities to enjoy the parks. Dislikes included hidden park entries, difficulty finding and accessing parks, so some of that kind of connectivity stuff that was being discussed. And then community needs touched on the need for sort of more active uses, opportunities to congregate and socialize, and also making parks easier to find and get to. Next. So another piece of takeaway from that urban design study was just looking at what the top popular parks and public spaces in the area are. These were the top 7. Hopefully familiar to most of the folks here, and interesting to us to see the 3 that are Montgomery Parks owned and controlled and operated parks, Willard Avenue, Western Grove, and Brookdale, since those are ones that we have a little bit more control over and can make changes to a little bit more directly. Next. Moving into what we've heard so far as we've worked on engagement in this plan, moving on from the urban design study, most of these things that we're hearing reflect those same ideas, looking for more opportunities to gather and socialize. Dog parks are always a popular amenity, and then also those sort of the need for more recreational activities and also the need for better connectivity to parks. And so moving on from that, parks and public space in the study area, which is that wider area that we look at, particularly for parks. This is important. It's outlined in red on this slide. The plan boundary is in black. These boundaries are not rigid ones that people can't cross over. So it's important for us to understand the parks in the wider surrounding area that do serve the folks within the plan boundary as well. So looking in here, we see a pretty good distribution of parks. A lot of the parks in the study area are up along the Little Falls Stream Valley Park and the Capitol Crescent Trail, which is a popular local amenity here. And one of the things that we check is access or distribution of parks and access for folks. And 99% of the population in this area can walk within 10 minutes to a park or a public open space, which is great. Next. So zooming in on the plan boundary, we see even better, ticking that last 1% to 100% of the population in this area are within a 10-minute walk of a park or public open space, which is fantastic. You can see those Montgomery parks and then CPPC parks in bright green here. The dark green ones are POPs, or privately owned public spaces, which we have a number of, particularly in that sort of more central downtown core, and then the village parks and town of Somerset parks along the boundary there as well, and a pretty good distribution throughout, as evidenced with that 10-minute walk metric. Next. So as we start to dig into things a little bit more, we take into account a number of different pieces of analyses. In addition to what we're hearing from everyone, we look at some data in terms of facilities per capita. We kind of mentioned the distribution that we're looking at there, and it gives us a good base point for looking at which amenities within our parks we think there probably are enough of, and then which ones we need to be concentrating on thinking about the potential for adding more to. And you can see in the green box here the types of amenities that are doing pretty well within the study and plan area, and then in red, the ones that we're going to be taking a closer look at there. And rectangle and diamond fields speaks to the athletic fields. Rectangle tends to translate as soccer or football, and diamond is the baseball and softball fields. Next. So these are going to zoom in a little bit on some of the parks in the plan area and touch on some of the challenges that we've identified. A lot of these have to do with some of those public realm and urban design elements that Tyler was mentioning. Brookdale is hidden from the sort of western and more downtown part of the plan area. It's hidden behind the Geico site and building. And then it's a little bit more obvious if you're in the Brookdale neighborhood. And great example of this is the photo on the bottom left there, where you can see the yellow arrow pointing to the park behind the Geico building. But if you were just walking down the street there and didn't know that the park was there, it would be very hard for you to know that it was there and that you could get to it. We can go to the next one. Willard Avenue Neighborhood Park. We've got 2 slides on this, and this first one actually shows a great before and after. The stuff that's outlined in red on the top there were a couple of properties on the corner at River Road and Willard Avenue that the Parks Department was able to acquire over the last couple of years, and we were able to remove those, I think late last year, early this year. And you can see below much more open and welcoming entry kind of space to the park from the corner there. And we're undertaking InDesign for sort of small project there to enhance that even a little bit more, to draw people in and make that a welcoming connection to the park and easy to use maintenance access for our staff as well. Next. And then this highlights a couple of those top, a difficult signage. It's a little hard to see in this picture, but the signage for the park here is parallel to the flow of traffic, both vehicular and on the sidewalk, and it makes it harder to identify that this is a park entrance and a place you can come in. And then on the bottom, you can see one where the signage is perpendicular at the entryway, and that helps create a more welcoming experience and draw people into the park better. So we're looking for more like the bottom part there. Next. This is touching on Willoughby Park, the photo on the top, and Friendship Heights Park on the bottom there. Willoughby Park lacks that sort of room structure feeling that Tyler was describing, and that makes it a less activated, less well-used park space. And Friendship Heights Park is cut off and forms a little bit of an island with the roadways around it, and then the garage entry and drop-off loops near the Whole Foods there that keep it a little bit cut off. So that those are some challenges for those parks. Next. Hubert Humphrey Park and Wisconsin Place are good examples on the sort of opposite ends of the spectrum. Hubert Humphrey has that great sort of room feeling and structure and some nice amenities, and it's one of the most active and well-used parks and open spaces in the plan area. And then Wisconsin Place is actually a pretty interesting plaza and public space when you get up there, but it's a little bit hard to find tucked up the staircase kind of above the Whole Foods and in behind and away from the streetscape. So those are good examples of both kind of what we're going for with one in Hubert Humphrey, and then things that we need to improve with that connectivity and wayfinding, and how do we get people to the spaces with Wisconsin Place. Next. So circling back to sort of the high points and what we're hearing from the community that we really love about the parks in the area are focusing in on that feeling of urban oasis, that opportunity to connect with nature and spend some time in green spaces. These are some pictures of Willard Ave and Brookdale and the Marnie Shoal Path, which do a great job of providing those experiences. So touching on some of the strong points that we have for parks in the area here. And then I think we've got one more to wrap up with next. And we do, so just a quick recap. We just touched on that good access to good access to nature. Sorry about that. We do have that kind of lack of diversity for some of those more active and social gathering amenities. So we'll be looking more into that in this plan as we progress. We talked about some of those visual cues and physical access to the existing spaces could be improved. Again, some of the spaces struggle with that design quality and that lack of a feeling of a sense of place or that kind of room structure. And then again highlighting that sort of connectivity and network, and how do these parks interconnect, and how do you get from one to another. So we have some strong things happening for parks in the area, and some things that we think we can focus on figuring out how to recommend improving. And now we're going to move on to the environment section. Thanks.
Good evening. Actually, I'm going to have you go to the next slide. Thank you. So good evening. For the record, I'm Tina Schneider. I'm the environmental planner for the project, and I'll be talking about some of the environmental findings. So this map shows the planned area with a total tree canopy cover of 36% or 62 acres. Under the tree canopy cover, the underlining purple and blue areas indicate the residential and multifamily residential zones with nearly 70% of the total tree canopy cover. In contrast, the peach-colored area or the commercial zone contains only 13.7% canopy cover. Next. These images show a few trees with mature canopies contributing to the beauty and the shade and the cooler temperatures of the residential neighborhoods. Next. However, in just 4 years, from 2009 to 2023, the community has lost 6.5% of its tree canopy cover, or 4 acres. There are many reasons for tree loss, such as diseases, invasive insects, development, a change in climate. But continued tree loss, as we know, has consequences from diminished community character and quality of place to pedestrian stress, habitat and ecological value loss, reduced real estate value, and much more. Next. Tree loss and tree absence indicate it increases heat island effect, putting stress on humans and all life. The image on the right shows urban heat temperatures at 6 feet above surface, exceeding 91 degrees on a day when the weather temperature was about 87 degrees. You can see that the hottest areas hover over the commercial zones with impervious cover of 56% and a tree canopy cover of 13.7. It's hot, yet in the residential zones, the tree canopy cover of 70%, temperatures are much lower. They're 6 degrees cooler than the actual weather temperature for that day. So these hot zones are particularly difficult on the elderly, on very young, and people with respiratory or other pre-existing conditions. Next. There is one main stem running along the northwest edge of Friendship Heights. It's called Little Falls Branch. In the upper right corner, circled in red, is where the stream begins to flow within the boundaries of Friendship Heights. It's a prized resource and loved so much that the citizens of Somerset House are actively removing very dense invasive species along the stream buffer and replanting with native trees, as shown on the left. Another location of daylit water is in the south. Most of the unnamed tributary is piped, but it pops up briefly on the Geico property, contributing to its sense of place and attraction of the landscape and site. Next. Stormwater drains into Little Falls Branch over surfaces and into underground storm drains. It's all part of the Lower Potomac watershed. Next. Water quality within the stream is designated as poor due to the lack of sufficient stormwater facilities, a high impervious cover, minimum naturalized landscape, and stream buffer. The only stormwater management facilities known in the area are shown in the images to the right. Next. This is the second master plan where I've begun to use the National Climate Vulnerability Index. It's a new and comprehensive compilation of national data showing climate vulnerabilities for each census tract across the entire country. The data is based on 184 index sets identifying inequities and drivers of climate vulnerabilities. It combines environmental, social, economic, and infrastructure impacts that shape a community's ability to respond to and adapt to climate change. It was developed to provide a clear map for planners, local governments, and federal agencies to target climate actions. Next. Of the 184 vulnerability index, the master planned area's greatest vulnerability comes from transportation. The darker pink shows the heaviest air pollution levels relative to national levels. For this master plan, air pollution sources align with regional congestion, the congestion along Wisconsin Avenue, and within the neighborhoods. Note that the air is cleaner along Little Falls Branch and where it is contiguous forest and large trees, and on the Somerset property where the trees are a predominant and integrated part of the entire landscape. This observation is important to note. Trees matter, and as shown in the smaller countywide comparison image, air quality is better than in other urbanized areas in the county. The older trees that dominate the landscape throughout Friendship Heights extract large amounts of criteria pollutants such as heavy metals, nitrogen dioxide, ozone, particulate matter, and black carbon, which causes human and biological physical stresses on the body. This concludes the environmental and ecological findings, and now on to transportation.
Thank you, Tina. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ronetta Zach Williams, and I'll be the transportation planner for this plan. Next slide, please. So what we've heard so far about transportation, we've heard that the area has great transit and is very walkable. We've also heard that it's terrifying to bike on Wisconsin, that there's a need for safer crossings across River Road and for more bus service to downtown DC as well as Bethesda, and for the need for a connection from Friendship Heights to the Capitol Crescent Trail. Next. The planned area is located at the Maryland and District of Columbia border, less than a mile south of downtown Bethesda, with key local and regional roads, including Wisconsin and Western Avenue, River Road, Willard Avenue, and Friendship Boulevard. The local street network can be characterized as a just disjointed grid system, and the downtown is disconnected from the surrounding neighborhoods, which is unique compared to other downtowns in Montgomery County. Along with locally generated traffic, the streets in Friendship Heights carry regional traffic in and out of the District of Columbia. Wisconsin Avenue acts as the primary thoroughfare running north-south with a host of commercial and residential buildings. Next. A tool that was created by Montgomery Planning to evaluate pedestrian conditions is the pedestrian level of comfort analysis, which evaluates how comfortable it is to walk and roll in the county. As you can see from this map, there is very little red, which indicates an undesirable experience. A portion of that is along North Park Avenue, which I'll speak to in a coming slide. Along Wisconsin and Willard Avenue, the conditions vary from very comfortable to uncomfortable. The full segment of Friendship Boulevard is very comfortable, while the residential streets lack sidewalk infrastructure, which varies from an uncomfortable experience to somewhat uncomfortable for the pedestrian. Next. This slide is showcasing some of the comfortable sidewalks in the planned area and the features that make them comfortable. In the photo showcased, you can see pedestrians walking and crossing along segments of Willard and Wisconsin Avenue, as well as Western Avenue, where you can see sidewalks with street buffers and trees, as well as high visible crossings and a pedestrian refuge island. Next. This slide is showcasing some of the uncomfortable sidewalks in Friendship Heights and the features that make them uncomfortable for pedestrians. On North Park Avenue, there are obstructions like traffic signs and light poles on the sidewalk path. On the Hills Plaza, there's a long continuous curb cut where a vehicle can turn along anywhere on this strip as a pedestrian is walking, and along River Road where the sidewalk is directly next to high-speed traffic. Next. The protected crossing spacing examines the frequency of protected crossing opportunities. The spacing for protected crossings is based on the street classification as defined in the Master Plan of Highways and Transitways. In the planned area, Wisconsin Avenue is doing fairly well, particularly south of South Park Avenue, along Wisconsin Circle, while the remaining streets exceed the maximum spacing for crossings. For example, you can see on River Road, the recommended spacing is 1,600 feet, but currently it exceeds that by over 2,000 feet. Next. From 2015 to 2023, there were 12 severe and fatal crashes in the planned area, which is the lowest compared to other downtowns in the county. These crashes occurred along Willard Avenue and at the intersection of Wisconsin Avenue and Somerset Terrace. There were also 3 crashes that occurred in parking structures. Next. The plan does not have existing infrastructure for bicycle travel besides the trails, which are the solid green lines on the map within the parks. The proposed bikeways, which are the dashed lines on the map, were recommended as part of the 2018 Bicycle Master Plan, which proposes separated bikeways along Wisconsin, Willard, Friendship Boulevard, and River Road, along with extending the trail from Willard Park Avenue through the behind the Geico site onto Western Avenue. On the DC side, there are currently conventional bike lanes on Jennifer Street and 44th Street, which DC is currently in the process of upgrading to a 2-way protected bike lane. They're also planning to add protected bike lanes along Western Avenue. Next slide. The bicycle level of stress refers to the amount of discomfort a bicyclist feels when they when they bike close to traffic. Within the downtown streets, they are high stress and inappropriate for most children and adults. These streets are highlighted in red. while the residential streets, mostly where you see light to medium blue colors, are very low stress and are appropriate for most children and adults. Next. There are 2 Capital Bike Share stations in the planned area at the Friendship Heights Metro Station, as well as another one on Willard and Friendship Boulevard. Last year, over 5,100 trips originated at these 2 stations combined. The top destinations where these trips ended included the Chevy Chase neighborhood of DC along the commercial areas of Connecticut Avenue, Kenwood Station, and West Bard Square near River Road and Landy Lane, as well as downtown Bethesda. While this doesn't include personal bike trips, it shows that even without the infrastructure and high-stress streets in the downtown, individuals are still biking. Next. Existing transit in the planned area includes the Friendship Heights Metro Rail Station, which operates on the Red Line between Shady Grove and Glenmont. There are also 13 Metro bus and ride-on routes, along with the Village of Friendship Heights shuttle, which operates 2 routes that connects Village residents to the West Bard Shopping Center, the Metro, as well as Chevy Chase Center. Friendship Heights Metro Rail Station operates every 5 to 6 minutes, and that changes to every 10 minutes after 9:30 p.m. During AM and PM peak hours, there are 3 bus routes that provide frequent service with varying headways between 5 to 20 minutes, and the remaining routes have headways between 20 to 45 minutes. The Village of Friendship Heights shuttle operates every 30 minutes regularly with 20-minute peak hours in the AM, as well as 50 minutes on weekends, as well as Wednesdays in the late afternoons. Next slide. So I talked a little bit about the existing transit, but all of that will change come June 29th. So over the last 2 years, Metro has been working on redesigning the entire bus network in the region. And at that same time, MCDOT worked on the Ride On Reimagine study to reassess ride-on service in the county. So you may have seen these changes at bus stops throughout the region. These changes will include route changes, updating route names, as well as frequencies to better fit the needs of customers. Additionally, MCDOT will be adding a new Friendship Heights Flex Zone, which is the county's micro-transit service, which will aid in making local trips around the Friendship Heights and Bethesda Metro Rail stations. Next slide. When looking at ridership at the Friendship Heights Metro Rail Station, ridership slightly dipped in 2016, but remained fairly consistent up until the COVID pandemic, where ridership dropped by 70%. Similarly, with regional trends, ridership is steadily increasing as we have moved away from the pandemic. Additionally, within the last 10 years, Friendship Heights has remained the 4th highest Metro Rail station in Montgomery County, following Silver Spring, Shady Grove, and Bethesda. Next. In this slide, we took a look at ridership numbers among the Montgomery County downtowns. Friendship Heights follows Silver Spring and Bethesda for station entries, with slightly over 4,000 average weekday trips and over about 2,000 average weekend trips. Next. So this slide is looking at average daily boardings for bus routes that service the Friendship Heights Metro Rail Station and beyond. And Friendship Heights also acts as a terminal station. With ride-on routes, the 34, which operates between Friendship Heights and Wheaton, as well as Route 1 and 11, which operates between Friendship Heights and Silver Spring, have the highest boarding numbers compared to the other routes. While looking at Metrobus, you can see that Route 33, which operates between Friendship Heights and Union Station via Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, has more average daily boardings and more than doubles the remaining routes, Metrobus routes in the plan area. Next. So as part of the countywide transit corridors plan, the recommended MD 355 South BRT route, which will run along dedicated lanes from Rockville Metro Station to Bethesda Metro Station. However, this route is planned with the option to extend from Bethesda down to Western Avenue if the District of Columbia constructs dedicated lanes on their segment of Western Avenue. Currently, the MD 355 BRT Central route is currently in the design phase, while the BRT route for the north and south are currently on standstill and will move forward if funding is secured. Next. There are 8 garages or parking lots in the planned area. This does not include additional private garages or parking for residents or businesses such as Geico. These 8 garages are privately owned and accessible to visitors shopping or spending time in Friendship Heights, with Chevy Chase Center as well as the shops at Wisconsin holding the most spaces. Another unique distinction between the planned area and other downtowns in the county is that Friendship Heights is the only downtown that does not have a county-owned garage or is part of the county's parking lot district program, which operates parking in central business districts in other downtowns, including Silver Spring, Bethesda, and Wheaton. The county does operate and maintain some street parking in Friendship Heights. Half of the garages have parking utilization rates over 50% in both AM and PM hours. However, overall, higher rates are found in the PM hours, which was just over half of the garages. Next slide. There are 105 on-street meter parking spaces in Friendship Heights that are maintained by the county on Friendship Boulevard, and as well as on a segment of Willard Avenue and Western Avenue for short-term and long-term parking. This concludes transportation, and next we'll move on to community amenities.
Hi again, everyone. Tyler Milam again, this time talking about community amenities. Next. So throughout our public engagement again, we've heard that generally community members are hoping for more amenities that people will stay for, such as movie theaters, coffee shops, and more restaurants. There's also a strong desire for full branch of the Montgomery County Public Library in the plan area. They're also looking for recreation facilities that can supplement the recreation center, specifically a pool. And also just a greater opportunity for entertainment, as well as more neighborhood serving retail. Next. So here we have a summary of amenities within the plan area and the study area. So while the plan area is small, there are a lot of amenities present. Those that are not within the plan boundary can be found within the study area, with the exception of a hospital, with most hospitals being about a 15 to 20 minute trip away by car or transit. Next. Within the plan area, there is a variety of amenities. There's a satellite police station located on North Park Avenue. A concentration of medical offices serve as a major draw for the plan area, and they're primarily located along Wisconsin Avenue and 5550 Friendship Boulevard. There's also several grocery stores, including Amazon Fresh and Whole Foods, which is also a draw, and then Trader Joe's will be joining in the study area shortly. Other amenities include County Recreation Center at Wisconsin Place, the Merritt Gallery, several daycare services, and a senior living facility and a post office. Next. Within the study area, there are more amenities, including the Little Falls Library at 5501 Massachusetts Avenue, the Connie Morella Library at 7400 Arlington Road, and the Chevy Chase Library at 8005 Connecticut Avenue. All 3 libraries are about a 10-minute drive outside the plan area. And Little Falls and Connie Morella libraries are under a 20-minute bus ride from the metro station. There's also the Avalon Theater on Connecticut Avenue, and the Regional Services Center, which provides a variety of county services to the area, is located in Bethesda. There's also 12 places of worship, all of which are within a 20-minute walk of the plan area, and most are easily accessible by bus. Similar amenities to those within the plan area can also be found throughout the study area, primarily along Wisconsin Avenue and Connecticut Avenue. Next. So there's also a strong, long-standing tradition of public art within Friendship Heights. The plan area has several works that range from sculptures, such as the 2 shown here in Hubert Humphrey Park, to an installation about time that is installed in the sidewalk and has several different elements to it throughout the downtown. Next. So for other more recent public art is that the Friendship Heights Alliance has recently added several murals throughout the study area, in particular, or in partnership with local artists and property owners to enhance the experience of the public realm. And that concludes community amenities. And next we'll be talking about public schools.
Hi, my name is Hei Su Beck. I'm the Adequate Public Facilities Planner, and I'll be going over the schools for the plan and study area. So there are no schools located within the plan boundaries, but the map on the right shows which schools are currently serving the plan and study area. Since the boundary change in 2022, most homes in the plan area are assigned to Westbrook Elementary School, except for the Somerset Homes condos, which go to Somerset Elementary School. Both of these elementary schools feed into Westland Middle School. The northeast side of the study area is served by the paired Rosemary Hills and Chevy Chase Elementary Schools and feed into Silver Creek Middle School, which opened in 2017. Both Westland and Silver Creek Middle Schools feed into Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. The middle and high schools, though, are subject to change in 2027 as they are included in the Woodward High School Boundary Study scope, which is ongoing right now. The next three slides, The next three slides, we'll be looking at bar graphs like this that show the enrollment trends since 2005 and MCPS's projections through 2030 for all the schools serving the plan and study area. The light blue bars show the total enrollment of all the schools serving the area. Dark bars show total capacity, and the red line shows utilization rate, which is enrollment divided by capacity. As you can see, for elementary schools, enrollment peaked and plateaued between 2012 to 2015, way before the pandemic, which is contrary to what a lot of people believe. In the meantime, there has been multiple capacity additions over the years in the area, leading to a huge surplus of elementary school seats. The latest projections from MCPS indicate that by 2030, over 600 seats will be considered surplus in these schools. To put that into perspective, none of the 4 elementary schools serving this area have more than 500 students enrolled. Somerset Elementary School in particular, which is experiencing a rapid enrollment decline, only has 314 students. Next. At the middle school level, enrollment peaked in 2019. While this coincides with the pandemic, considering that the elementary school enrollment peaked in 2015, it was probably about time for the middle school enrollment to peak around then. MCPS is projecting that there will be about 350 surplus seats in the 2 middle schools by 2030. Next. Bethesda Chevy Chase High School started receiving the growth cohort that showed the growth spurts in elementary schools and middle schools around 2014, and enrollment has continued to grow until very recently. It started slowing down around 2023, though, which is likely the natural consequence of the elementary and middle schools peaking earlier in sequence. Next. One thing to note, as mentioned earlier, is that this area is part of the ongoing boundary study for the reopening of the Charles Woodward High School. The map here shows all 8 high schools included in this study scope and the location of the new Woodward High School. The high schools altogether are projected to have 750 surplus seats in 2030, and middle schools about 1,300 seats. Next. The last piece of data that we've looked at for existing conditions is the student generation rates, which comes from comparing the number of students living in the area to the number and type of housing units in the area. As the table below shows, single-family units have less public school students relatively than the rest of the county, which is partially due to the percent of homes sold in the last 15 years being smaller than the rest of the county. Multifamily units have significantly less students, which is probably a reflection of the demographics of the area, which was briefed on earlier. Talking about the plan area students, between 2017 and 2024, the total number of students in K-12 increased slightly, but decreased at the broader study area level. Elementary school students decreased at both the plan and study area level, while high school students increased, which is similar to what we saw in the bar graphs earlier for the school enrollment. That concludes the schools part, and next we'll be hearing about historic resources.
Hi, everyone. Back to me, which means this is the last topic to cover, and it's quite a short section, so we're nearly done. Thank you so much for your patience. There are currently no buildings or sites within the plan area that are listed on either the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites or the County Master Plan for Historic Preservation. Those are two documents that document historic resources that have already been evaluated or are waiting to be evaluated in the county. So we don't have any of those. We don't have any resources listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And I think it's important for us to let everyone know that since the 1998 plan envisioned the redevelopment of the Geico parcel, including the demolition of the building, and there is still, as I think many people know, an approved development plan for that parcel, that we are not considering to reevaluate that at this time because it is already approved for demolition. However, there are two sites I do want to talk about. One is the site on the Montgomery County Burial Sites Inventory. On Murray Road in Brookdale, there is the Shoemaker Family Cemetery, and you can see a shot from the Burial Sites Inventory, which is public and on our website, and you can look it up and look at all the sites that have been identified. And here's a highlight of the Shoemaker Family Cemetery. It was established in 1853 as a family burial plot. There is evidence of burial markers on this site, despite the absence of any headstones anymore. And so that is a site that we know about, and you know, there's been some research done about that site in the county. The other site I want to mention is the Reynolds House. The Reynolds House is a potential historic property located at 5230 Willard Avenue in Willard Avenue Neighborhood Park. It was built in 1899 and occupied by Edwin and Julia Reynolds. Edwin was an engineer with the U.S. Patent Office. The Parks Department acquired the property with the house in the mid 1990s as part of their plan to expand the park. At the time, the house was not considered historic, but about 15 years later, as part of a larger review of park properties, a consultant that was hired by the Parks Department found that the house met several potential criteria for designation, but the house was not yet evaluated by county historic preservation staff, and this is something that we will study in this sector plan as we move forward. So with that, we have now completed our existing conditions overview. And again, the purpose of this presentation was to give you an idea of what we've been researching over the past 4 months. As the planning team, we need this background information to be able to make recommendations in the future and work with all of the community and all of the stakeholders here on plans for the future for Friendship Heights. And this gives you a sense of the baseline that we are coming with from a data perspective. Of course, we're also hearing all of your thoughts and what you've been talking to us about and what you'll continue to talk to us about as well. And all of that feeds into the information we have so that we can look forward and say, okay, what can we create together as a vision for the next 20 years? And that takes me to our next step. We will present this presentation, basically the same presentation with a different introduction to the planning board next Thursday on May 29th. The agenda is posted on our website. I can send anybody a link. It will basically be the same presentation, but that is also going to be recorded, as all of our planning board meetings are recorded. And then you'll get to hear, you know, the planning board members' questions and the discussion and conversation that will take place when we present this there. After we are done with that, there's no action taken, and this is very important. There's nothing for the planning board to approve. We're just reporting back to them everything we've learned so they know where we're starting from. So there's nothing for them to approve, no action taken. We move right into our next phase, which is visioning. Visioning is the part of the process where we hold a variety of opportunities, in-person workshops, online meetings, surveys, which we'll do during the summer. We'll have some focus groups. It's going to start in June. It will end probably at the end of September. There'll be lots of opportunities to participate. This is where we start thinking about big ideas that will be hopefully in the plan in the future, how to put together a vision for Friendship Heights. We need participation from the community for it to work and for us to get a vision that, you know, meets people's needs and responds to people's concerns. And so there'll be, if you're on our e-letter list, which is the next thing I'm going to remind you about, you'll get all the emails about this. We've already sent one out with the registration open for June 11th and June 24th. It will cover the same topics. We're just going to do an in-person one, and then we'll do a virtual one for anybody who can't join us in person. So here's our plan website, and there's an e-letter there. You can sign up if you're not already on it, although I imagine most of you are, and that's how you found out about this meeting. And of course, here's my email. So with that, I'm going to, we're going to move to the next, 20 or so minutes, and we'll keep to that for Q&A. I know there's been a lot of questions already answered in the Q&A box, and thank you to everybody for using that box, and hopefully that's been helpful. But the ones that I think that we felt were sort of broader questions and everyone could benefit from the answers, we're going to sort of discuss now. And Larissa is going to introduce herself and then ask the questions, and either I'll answer them or another one of the planners on the team will respond.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for your time. I'm Larissa Clevin, the Master Plan Supervisor for Down County, and for tonight, I am your Q&A moderator. As Atara mentioned, a lot of questions have come in, and I've done my best to group them and really highlight some of the ones that we've heard repetitively. So the first question for Atara is, why is some of the Brookdale neighborhood in the plan area, and what are the potential impacts, including zoning?
So I'm going to go back to the map for this because I think, let's see if I can get this to work. Because I think that will help us. Okay. So, and I'm also going to explain, I know there was a lot of questions that I think conflated the plan area and the study area, which I fully understand. So I'm going to answer those two in addition to the Brookdale question. So this is the plan boundary that we proposed in our scope of work back in February that the planning board approved, and it will be the boundary for the duration of the plan. Why did we include this little piece of Brookdale? Well, this, if you look at the downtown, right, the downtown sort of has a buffer around all of it, except for this part of Brookdale. This part of Brookdale is right up against the Geico property, knitted together with Brookdale Neighborhood Park. And even before we knew anything about Geico moving, which we didn't know about when we started working on this, we knew we wanted to reevaluate the way the last plan treated the Geico property and to take a new, fresh look at it, given the context of Friendship Heights today, the needs of the area, the county, et cetera. And we thought that one way to really evaluate what kind of connections could be made between Brookdale and the downtown was to include this part of the neighborhood all the way to River Road. And that brings me to River. River is another major north-south corridor in this area. Wisconsin, we know, is the main one, but in Friendship Heights, because you do not have sort of a grid that connects outside Friendship Heights because of the natural boundary of that park between Somerset and Friendship Heights, there's a lot of pressure on Wisconsin to be everything to everyone, which we will talk about as we get into sort of visioning for that area. And we thought if we drew the plan to River, it gave us an opportunity to evaluate River as another connection sort of out of Friendship Heights. It also gave us the opportunity to include Willard Avenue Neighborhood Park and its connections to the neighborhood and certainly to Friendship Heights. It is a park that is used by many, but was not included in any of the previous Friendship Heights plans. And Parks Department felt it would be valuable to include it, and of course to include all of Brookdale Neighborhood Park. And that is the reason why we extended the proposed boundary, which is now the approved boundary for this plan, to there. Now, I will say the plan boundary is the most important boundary because anything we recommend in this plan, we can only recommend things about properties and buildings and locations inside the plan boundary. So although we have established what we call a study area, which is this large area here that's highlighted in yellow with the dashed line, you can see the plan boundary in the middle. This is just the area that we're using as the context from which we are pulling context level data, which we spoke about in this presentation at length, demographics, housing, looking at office and retail, looking at other kinds of data. This is not part of the plan in that we will not be making any recommendations, of course, not to this piece in DC, and even to anything in Maryland that is outside of this plan area. I know it's confusing because plan area and study area sound like synonyms, but in the case of a sector plan, they're actually different. So I hope that has helped clarify. I think there were some questions about why we talked about DC. DC is an important context for Friendship Heights because it's literally on the other side of the border, and Friendship Heights as a neighborhood, as we have heard from many people, extends from Maryland into DC. And that's why we included all of this piece here. This part of the study area is obviously in DC because this is Western. And that's why looking at some trends in Friendship Heights and understanding how do they compare to the rest of the county, the rest of DC, and to the immediate context, for us, it's helpful. It's helpful to understand what distinguishes Friendship Heights, in what ways it's similar to the rest of the area, and in what ways is it different.
Atara, as a follow-up to that question, and just so everyone knows, I'll be continuing to keep an eye on the Q&A as stuff comes in while Atara is answering these. There's a question about why Western Park was not included in the boundary.
Western Grove, yes. So we talked about it, but to be honest, that park, I'll go back right here so people can understand where it is, Western Grove Urban Park. It was just renovated in 2017. And typically when we look at a park in a sector plan, we talk about what, as we'll be talking about, and this is one of the topics that'll be in our first visioning session on June 11th, what amenities are we missing from Friendship Heights, what other kinds of parks we'd like to see, what kind of improvements to existing parks. And that park was just improved, and in sort of in a park improvements timeline, 2017 is very recent. And so we felt that we did not want to include that and say we were going to make improvements to that park when in truth, that's probably not happening until maybe the next sector plan round in another 20 and 25 years. So we decided, although we will be talking about connections to that park from the downtown as part of the plan, sort of how do you get there from the downtown, that is still something we are going to be looking at.
Thanks, Atara. Another question that came in during your presentation was thinking about how the plan is going to respond to the recession within the Washington and DC area.
So plans take a 20-year vision. We, of course, keep in mind what's happening now. You just saw all this data about how things are now, and we will keep in mind what's happening in the near future. We try to, look at the recommendations as a mix of some things are going to be very long-term, very sort of long-term vision. Some will be more short-term. We try and keep in mind what we think will happen in the short term versus the long term. We're not, of course, we can't predict the future, but we do have a market analysis consultant on our team who is helping with looking at, the current market, what the near-term market could be, so that we can make recommendations that keep both the reality and the potential change in the long term in mind.
And then just another question. I know that you started talking about this a little bit earlier with the study area, but it might just be worth reiterating again, kind of why DC is considered in a comparison and why we are using DC within the study area.
Well, DC is actually an extremely important part of the study area. I will say one of the questions we get the most over the past 6 to 8 months has been, how are we keeping track of what happens in DC? How are we coordinating with DC, planners? Because we have heard from many people that they feel that, the Wisconsin Avenue corridor is relatively seamless. This is downtown Friendship Heights. It's on both sides of the border. It's actually a really unique border condition here. We don't have this parallel condition at Silver Spring on the other side, which is the other county downtown that borders DC. There you have downtown Silver Spring with denser development, and it kind of switches really quickly to single family homes in Shepherd Park on the other side. Here we have a much more of a similar condition on both sides with this mixed use corridor with a lot of retail and commercial space on Wisconsin, then surrounded by residential on either side that is a very similar land use condition. And we felt that the DC context was actually quite important. There is a Trader Joe's opening soon in this building right here, and we know that people from Friendship Heights would go there, and so therefore things that happen on that side impact us. And so we don't always use DC as context when we're doing plans, particularly if they're much farther up in the county, but here this is the immediate context, so it's relevant.
And those are the questions that have come in so far. If anyone has additional questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A now, or Atara shared her information, and I'm sure she'll put it back up on the screen, and you can feel free to reach out to her directly.
Yes, and if you want to email me a question that's really for one of the other planners, obviously I'm able to share that, and then they can get back to you directly. We know there is a really lot of data here, and I think some people Larissa's already been sharing individual planners emails out, so we'll wait a minute or two to see if there's any additional questions, but I know it's late. I really thank everybody for sticking with us, and I hope people will come out for visioning. It's a lot more interactive and more fun than listening to us talk for an hour and 20 minutes about Friendship Heights. Larissa, since I can't see it, I'll leave it to you to tell me that we've got more questions that we're going to answer or that we'll close.
Oh, I apologize. There are also just a couple of questions about how people can get the PowerPoint.
Great. Let me talk about that. So this
Yep.
is being recorded right now. We are going to, after we go to the planning board next week, just in case we have to add a slide or something, we will, after that, we will be posting this recording on our website, and we will also post the PDF of this presentation on the website. And eventually we actually have even more background info that we didn't put in the presentation. We're working on packaging that in a way that we can share in case people want to go even deeper on just a few of these subjects. So I would say to give us about a week, but we'll have it up online, and we'll be sending out more e-letters before visioning to remind people and explain more about what we'll be doing there. And of course, by then this stuff will be online and we'll put links to it and direct people how to find it. But everything will be sort of visible on that front page of our website. We already have a lot of information up there about the visioning events. So if people didn't get the email and they are interested, you can just go to the website that's right here, or you can literally Google Friendship Heights Sector Plan, Montgomery Planning. It will come up. Anything else?
There was also just a question about whether or not we will email a link to the recording and the presentation.
To the
and
registrants, yeah. Anybody who registered for this.
I'm sorry, Tara. I think people meant to the like the slide deck and the planning board presentation.
Yes, the people who registered for this presentation, we will send a direct email saying, here's the recording and here's the PDF, but all that will also be posted on our website so anybody can watch it who wasn't here.
And could you also please reiterate, we're getting a couple of comments that they'd like additional information, additional clarity on how zoning in Brookdale will be affected by the plan?
Sure. So we actually don't know how or if we're changing any zoning yet in the plan, because this is the work we've been doing so far, which was gathering the existing data. We will be, of course, evaluating all the zoning, but it doesn't mean that the zoning will change on every parcel. It really varies from plan to plan. So we really just don't have an answer for that yet. But if people come to visioning, at some point, we'll probably be talking about zoning more in the fall. So just stay tuned and stay on the email list, and you'll find out opportunities to talk with us about development and zoning and other issues that will be in the plan.
And I think that is it for this evening.
Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone coming and everyone being so patient with us, and have a good night. Take care all.